Our fans, Pete here from the Lasser Cast, where me and my co-host with the most over there, Danny, Dr. Zayas God, discuss all the new horror movie releases, horror streaming shows, and we also like to dip into the well and talk about some horror classics. Sometimes there's cult classics too, and tonight's discussion is on 1989's Shocker, which
Shocker!
yes, and here's a shocker. And I think at least one of us is wearing pants tonight.
It's not me. I'm wearing shorts.
Okay, well, there you go. It's not me either, but here we go. So let's dive right into this. Danny, last week when we talked about The People Under the Stairs, you said that you watched that on video first. I'm assuming the same thing is the case for Shocker.
Yeah, definitely. This was as somebody who got into horror because of Nightmare on Elm Street, because of Freddy Krueger, and went back and started to watch the Nightmare franchise, which by 1989 was at least 4 movies in that you could rent at the video store, probably with part 5 on the way. The idea of Wes Craven's like newest kind of monster movie coming out in the video stores in like 89, 1990, when I was, 7, 8 years old, was really exciting. I remember seeing this when I was really young and not really understanding a lot of it. It was very weird.
Yeah.
There's this movie, it's a lot. It is a lot. And the one thing I want to say is I do have kind of a cult classic appreciation of this movie.
Yeah.
While also fully admitting that it is not a good movie.
Okay. Oof.
Almost at all.
Okay. Whew.
The one great thing about the movie, well,
yes.
That's not true. Couple great things about the movie. The soundtrack is fucking amazing.
Yes.
And we could talk about the soundtrack. I saw on social media, I think you were at a metal show recently, last night maybe.
Yeah.
So we probably have the same sentiments or tastes in music. Yes. This movie is just loaded on the soundtrack from the opening credits to the end credits. It is a joy.
Yes.
And the other thing that this movie has going for it is the just unbridled enthusiasm of Mitch Pileggi as Horace Pinker.
Yes.
To the point where I've said for years, I want a remake of Shocker.
Yes.
And I would just recast Mitch Pileggi and have him come back and do Horace Pinker again. I feel like he is the one saving grace of the movie where you can say, just bring him back. He's not that old, he's still around. Let him, have some fun. As the movie kind of ends ambiguously about Horace Pinker's, like, he doesn't die in the horror villain sense. So the idea that he could still theoretically be out there as like a, what does the Scream movies call it? A requel or a legacy sequel,
right.
Something of that nature. I'd love to see. But yeah, the rest of this movie is not great.
It's funny, right? Because Mitch Pileggi, I think a lot of people probably know him from the X-Files, right? They know him as Skinner, right? That's what I knew him as. And then he showed up on Supernatural, and he was the Winchester's grandfather, and he was this kind of antagonistic character. And he's very different from Director Skinner, because Director Skinner is like very by the books, very straightforward. I think there might have been an episode or two where he got like a little unhinged. Maybe he like went off the deep end or he got possessed or something. But you're just not used to seeing Mitch Pileggi like he is in this movie. And it kind of reminds me of this other guy that's also like a Chris Carter alumni. He was on Lost. He was the guy that played Locke. I can't remember that guy. He's in
oh God.
Yeah.
Now
I'll look him up as I'm talking, but
he was the stepfather.
That's exactly what I'm going for, is that you have these actors, these bald actors that are like super serious and straightforward. Terry O'Quinn is his name.
I wanted to say he has an Irish last name, but if I was wrong, I didn't want to come across. I think we've officially reached the age where the more information we take in, we do lose bits and pieces of information on the back end.
Is that like
So,
Kelly Bundy kind of syndrome or something there?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, well, I was just so happy to see him so unhinged. He was like a Batman villain. And what's really interesting about this movie, because this is the first time I ever saw it, right? First time I ever saw this movie, is that there's a good chunk of the movie, almost half of the movie, before he gets electric powers.
The movie is too long, is what you're trying to say.
This guy's very saucy today. I'm digging it,
No,
man.
I think that was part of the reason I couldn't get into this movie as a kid, because when you rent this movie and the box art and the taglines, let's be realistic. Craven wanted a new Freddy. It was very obvious from what I've read. I think he was a little annoyed with the direction they had taken Freddy in post Dream Warriors. Parts 4 and 5, and I just rewatched them with Charlotte. We have a franchise ranking on the channel you can check out. Parts 4 and 5 are incredibly bogged down with, one-liners, and Freddy really being more of a Hollywood celebrity who is more concerned about, being funny and cool than he is about killing teenagers in their sleep.
Right.
And I think Craven was fed up with that, and he wanted to go back to like a real, like part 1 to 3 hardcore serial killing monster.
Yeah.
And so he has this Horace Pinker character, and the movie does spend I think he gets electrocuted almost 45 minutes into the movie.
Exactly. And the movie's like an hour and 30 minutes.
No, the movie is an hour and 50 minutes close. It's really, it's about 110 minutes, which for a supernatural slasher is about 20 minutes too long. Like this movie could have started, you could have established that Horace Pinker was that there's a serial killer. You could have established that there's a connection to this kid, Jonathan.
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes in, he gets captured. He gets the death penalty, and he becomes this, Electro-esque horror villain.
Right.
But instead, that's a 45-minute journey. I wrote here, the movie has too many ideas. We get hints of black magic. We have dream visions, which, coming from the guy who made A Nightmare on Elm Street, is a little too on brand. I thought that whole dream sequence stuff was a little too on the nose for a guy who's trying to like move past Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
You have literal ghosts in this movie who just show up to support the main characters.
Right.
You have possession horror. And then you have just a serial killer story, which, as you said, takes up about the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie.
Yes.
There's so much, like you could have taken any two of those elements and made a great 90-minute horror movie, but you try to combine too many of those elements and it gets very muddled.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Peter Berg is the protagonist in this, right? And he's a interesting director. Like the movies he takes on are real interesting. But in this, I thought his acting was pretty bad, right? And so he's the lead. He's Jonathan. They really develop his story, considering this is just like a slasher movie about a guy who uses electric powers, right? Like they show that he's a football player. They show that he like was a foster child. He kind of gets distracted from football by women, and then they introduce this girlfriend, and his girlfriend is this absolutely beautiful actress, Camille Cooper. She plays Allison. When they introduce her, I'm like, oh no, are they introducing her basically to be fridged? Have you ever heard of the term fridged?
Is that like the stereotypical girlfriend character who just like is there to support the boyfriend and then maybe get caught?
Yeah. Gail Simone, who's a comic book writer, she came up with that term like in the 90s, I think. And it's because like one of the Green Lanterns, he came home from being in space one time and his girlfriend was cut up and left in the refrigerator by a villain, right? And so that's where the term fridged comes from.
Oh.
And it's mainly the idea of a girlfriend being killed to advance the hero's plot, but it can apply to non-girlfriends too, and male characters too. But in this, I was like, oh shit, are they gonna like kill her right away so he wants to get revenge? And they do, you know. And I felt really bad for her because she like truly loves Jonathan, and then she's kind of his like spirit guide throughout the rest of the movie. But you know, I knew that was coming, and it was like really fucked up the way that he killed her. Like Pinker, he's kind of like a Batman villain, and you compared him to Electro, Spider-Man villain, right? But he's kind of like a
just
Batman.
in the electric power sense.
Right. He's more like a Batman villain, in my opinion, because he's kind of like taunting the police and stuff before he even gets any kind of powers. And then when he gets powers, like, oh, fuck, it's even worse, you know? And the way that he kills Jonathan's girlfriend, where he says, like, happy birthday, and she's in the tub and stuff, it's very, like, you know, over the top and dramatic. I liked all that stuff, but it kind of seems goofy, you know, because the acting is pretty bad. Like, it's just a silly movie.
Yeah. I think that the dad, the foster dad in this movie is ridiculous. Like, he doesn't have a normal face the entire movie. He's either screaming in panic or screaming in anger.
Yeah.
Peter Berg is a weird guy. He went on to direct one of mine and my friend's favorite movies because it's so insane. Very Bad Things.
Very Bad Things. Yes.
But then after that, he kind of became, I refer to him as he directs a lot of America movies.
Yeah.
With Mark Wahlberg. Yeah. Where it's like, we have to win this for America. And, you know, it's like Lone Survivor and Patriot Day, and like even Battleship, which was a $200 million absolute bomb, which tried to turn a boring board game into a terrible alien movie with Rihanna. It just nothing. He's just a very strange guy.
I agree.
For the choices he makes. And I could see why he got into directing, because I don't think he's that great of an actor.
Right.
But, you know, I did like the relationship between him and his girlfriend a little bit.
Yeah. Allison, yeah.
My cat is just attacking something.
Is it possessed by Horace Whitaker?
Oh, no.
Horace Pinker? Oh, my God.
I'm just going to go behind over there. I think my cat is stuck in a cabinet. One sec.
Okay, I'm going to make a point while you're doing that.
Yeah.
The acting is like what we keep talking about. We kind of keep poking at the acting. But you know what? Honestly, the writing is a little flawed too. I think Wes Craven makes pretty tight movies, and he knows how to set up scares. But I think that in this particular movie, the logic is just out the window. Like, they establish that Jonathan can have these visions and that he can see Pinker, right? And so Pinker's like, I'm gonna get you, like, you know, you fucking found me, I'm gonna get you. And they don't like put him in protective custody or anything like that. It's not like they have like a bodyguard. I mean, even in movies that are like about 10 years later with like Scream 2, Ghostface shows up again and they have bodyguards on Sydney, right? I think even in the first Scream, they might have like Dewey kind of following her around. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it also, based on the way, like, this is a small town.
Yeah.
I did not buy for 1 second that Horace Pinker would be this like secretive serial killer. He drives a very obvious murder truck with his name on it as a cable repairman, like Pinker Cable Repair.
Yeah.
And so, and he's not subtle. He doesn't sneak in while people are sleeping and slice their throats. He like screams at the top of his lungs and like murders people as they're screaming. Right. Nobody hears anything. Nobody looks out a window. Nobody sees this murder van.
Yeah.
And a guy with a limp.
Right?
So I didn't even buy that, like, he was a serial killer who's hunting a town. It just felt like he's this loud maniac that you would see on the street. And like, oh God, there's Horace Pinker. Let me cross the street to avoid him. You know?
He killed 30 people by the beginning of the movie. 30 people.
And it felt like the movie made us like go through all 30 of them.
Yeah. I mean, when someone kills like 4 people, everyone's looking for them, you know, and you know, they find them right away. But yeah.
And I think that, again, you know, to your point where it takes so long to get to, this movie has a few set pieces that are really fun. The first one is when he is arrested and when he is about to be electrocuted, because we find him having this like poltergeist moment in his cell, right, where he's like, we only get like the barest minimum hints of black magic, but he's right, somehow controlling the electricity from his TV. And then, you know, he's getting electrocuted. We also get this other incredibly bizarre plot point where it turns out he's Jonathan's father.
Yes.
That he just throws that in right before like they pull the current to kill him.
Right.
And then he becomes this like electric possessing demon that can jump in and out of bodies. And then we get what I think is probably the best scene in the whole movie. And the reason that I would love this to be remade, I call it the channel surfing scene, where late in the movie, somehow Jonathan in his dream is able to basically attain the powers that Horace Pinker does. And they chase each other into the TV. And they're traveling through TV shows and channels. And they show up in people's apartments. People are watching TV and they're like, is that Jonathan? Wait, what's he doing on TV? And then they would come through the TV and they'd be fighting in somebody's living room, jump back into the TV. That is such a fun set piece moment. It's so much better than the movie around it.
Yes.
And like, that moment has always stuck with me as technology has improved. Yes. I'm talking to you on a cell phone. You're talking to me on a laptop.
Yes.
We can channel surf on these devices. I'm looking at my TV right now and I'm looking at the Roku home screen. And, you know, there's countless, I have hundreds of channels. And I just think of like what Horace Pinker could do with, you know, 2023 and modern technology and jumping through streaming, jumping through our pockets, jumping onto our laptops, going into like an office building where everybody's in a cubicle on a desktop computer. I think it would be so much fun. And like, I would say, fuck it, do that for an hour of the movie and then keep the exposition to like the barest minimum.
Yeah. He like shows up on Netflix and he's like cutting someone's head open. He's like, is it cake? You know, like something like that. You know,
like the British baking show. And then, then he goes on to HBO Max and he's like, you know, he's in the boardroom of Secession, you know,
perfect.
You could do all these crazy things. And I love that scene. It's just like a really fun scene buried in just so much.
Yes. So you know what's funny, Danny? I'm going to make a little confession here. I actually did not get to that scene in the movie. I rented it from Amazon. You know, I paid like $4.99 or $3.99 to rent it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I was just super fucking busy. And then the time came, I had to renew it. I had gone too long. And then I'm like, okay, hold on a sec. Our People Under the Stairs video got like 11 views. Like, we're not making any money out of this. And I'm going to go spend $9 on Shocker. I was like, I can't do it. I enjoyed it, but I actually did not see the final act of the movie.
Yeah, the final act of the movie, you know, that scene I'm describing is a lot of fun. But even then at the end, you know, Horace Pinker is kind of left in the TV world, and you don't really get like he's not killed. He's not like officially left for dead. There is room for somebody, you know, to write a legacy sequel. You know, this feels like something that there's several movies that I've watched where I think to myself, you know, it's really easy to just go, oh, all remakes suck, all remakes are bad, but there are good ones, and there are good repackagings of old IP.
Yes, of course.
The Hills Have Eyes, which is a Craven property, has, I know, one of your favorite remakes of all time.
It is.
The Scream movies themselves have touched on the whole requel, legacy sequel thing, and they've done a great job with it these last few years.
I mean, I think like the classic example is The Thing, right? Like John Carpenter's The Thing. How that's a remake, right? I mean, that's like
it is. I also think it's a little different with The Thing, just because The Thing, there is an original piece of literature that The Thing from Another World and John Carpenter's The Thing are both based off of.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
I know people call it, I mean, like, hey, The Fly, Cronenberg's The Fly is a remake. The Blob, the 80s had tons of great sci-fi remakes. The Thing, The Fly, and The Blob are the three classic examples.
Right. Well, I mean, like, even okay, so like 80s, you're right. 80s has these classic examples. They're few and far between nowadays, but like The Invisible Man, like Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, I think that I think it's all about the reason behind the remake, and like we've seen with Wes Craven properties, Nightmare on Elm Street. That was a straight up cash grab. It was not good. It was, it's more of an insult to the prior works,
Yeah.
That's why I'll always give Rob Zombie credit for what he did with his Halloween movies, because he did something different. He took source material that was, is held on the highest pedestal, and he said, I'm not just going to redo that shot for shot. I'm going to do something different with the characters in that world.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to like it because I'm Rob fucking Zombie, but I'm going to do something different with it. And I do want to talk a little bit about the soundtrack of this movie, because so there's a band, the song Shocker, which plays in the opening credits, which immediately made me think of Strutter by Kiss. It's performed by a band called the Dudes of Wrath.
Oh God.
Do you know who the Dudes of Wrath are?
No. Are they like Lion? Are they the band Lion?
No, they're a super group.
Oh, okay.
And they're effectively composed of Paul Stanley from Kiss.
Oh.
Tommy Lee from Motley Crue.
Oh.
Alice Cooper.
What?
Rudy Sarzo, who has been in a bunch of bands, including Ozzy and Quiet Riot.
Nice.
Vivian Campbell, who was in Dio. Desmond Child, and Guy Schiffman, who goes by the name Guy Mandude. And they have this super group that put out a few albums together. And and then on top of that, you have Megadeth covering Alice Cooper's No More Mr. Nice Guy. You have Iggy Pop on the soundtrack. The 80s were just a different time, man. Like, I rewatched Batman 89 yesterday, and like listening to like original Prince songs.
Yeah.
Looking at your shirt, looking at that, like listening to like the original Prince songs in the 1989 Batman, and thinking like how fucking nuts it is that they got Prince to do all these original songs for this movie.
Yes. I mean, we could easily do a deep dive on 80s soundtracks for genre movies, right? I think like David Weiner, he should fucking get us on, and we should do that part on In Search of Darkness.
I mean, Dream Warriors, Dokken, of course. Alice Cooper is the man behind the mask for Jason Lives.
Yeah. I said the band Lion because I know that like on the Transformers the movie soundtrack, the cartoon movie from 1986, there's one band where like for some reason they fucked up the name of the band, so they gave him a different name on the album. That's what I was thinking you were talking about before. But like that movie has this incredible metal soundtrack. You mentioned Prince with Batman, still 80s, 1989. And then I also think of Highlander, which like Queen did the whole soundtrack for that. Queen did the whole soundtrack for
Princes of the Universe, baby.
Yeah. So there's all these. I mean, it's kind of funny because you wouldn't think of like you'd always think that like symphonic music, like orchestral music would be the best kind of soundtrack for a movie. But sometimes just the right song at the right moment is just fucking chef's kiss.
I feel like we're talking a lot about stuff that's outside of the wheelhouse of Shocker because, again, at its core, Shocker was not very well received.
No.
I think Craven might have had the idea of doing a new franchise, but the reception and the box office was just not there. And I think his next movie after this might have been People Under the Stairs.
It is. It's kind of funny because, we're doing this Wes Craven kind of month, this Wes Craven review of all of his movies that are not Scream, not Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's like 1988 is The Serpent and the Rainbow. 1989 is this. And then People Under the Stairs is 1991. Then he has Vampire in Brooklyn. Then there's a gap. And then there's Scream. So it's like he's definitely trying all different.
Did you mention New Nightmare?
Oh, shit. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Because that's 94. 94 is New Nightmare.
Right, and then there's like a 2-year gap, and then the Scream's like 96. Right, good call.
And then basically Scream becomes like his career for the last part of his life. He does a couple movies here and there. Of course, the classic Music of the Heart, which we will cover next week.
Yes. But it's funny though. I was gonna say though that we were
Meryl
talking about
Streep got nominated for a goddamn Oscar for that movie. So all the jokes about it. Give Craven credit for stepping outside of his comfort zone.
Yeah, no. Like with this movie though, the box office wasn't good. The critical reception wasn't good. Siskel and Ebert, they gave it like a thumbs down and kind of like a marginal thumbs up. One of the critics was saying how like he was trying to like essentially make like a new Nightmare on Elm Street, just like you said, or it was a response to Nightmare on Elm Street. When I did the research, it was interesting too because behind the scenes there was issues too. The guy that did the special effects for it, he kind of tried some really ambitious stuff, and it was like too much for him. So he ended up having a nervous breakdown. And so Wes Craven put his son in charge of like kind of gathering all the film negatives and stuff they could find so they could kind of salvage the movie. And so when Wes Craven, we're talking about remakes, Wes Craven himself has said he's wanted to remake Shocker just to have better special effects.
I can see that. It's funny. We were talking about the soundtrack and we're talking about all these awesome metal bands and metal performers. And that scene that I described, the channel surfing scene, as I call it, it feels very music video. Mm-hmm. This feels like kind of like a VHS, an MTV style movie.
Yes.
And I do think, and like I know it might sound like I'm shitting on it. I do recommend that anybody who has not watched Shocker gives it a shot because while it is not great, you will find something to appreciate in this movie, whether it is the glorious over-the-top performance of Mitch Pileggi, whether it's the awesome soundtrack, whether it's the crazy 1989 effects of, this serial killer and this kid bouncing through TV shows. They're in a war scene in one scene, then they're in a football movie. It's so bizarre.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to give praise for, though. I mean, it's goofy as hell. It's pretty stupid, but I love all the over-the-top shit. There's this one part where he electrocutes himself, and the two cops that are looking over him, they're like, should we give him mouth-to-mouth? And the one cop's like, oh, fuck, I'll give him mouth-to-mouth. And then he just, like, bites on his lip and stretches it out, like, to a cartoonish point. Then he bites the other cop's finger. He's just like a fucking rabid animal.
Finger licking good.
Right. And he has all these little comments, right? Then after he like dies and he possesses that woman, they go to take her to the hospital. He like gets up, he just twists the one cop's head around and he's like, could go for some head or something like that.
That's where like if Craven was upset at like the direction Freddy was going, it was very weird that he turns Horace Pinker into this like wisecracking serial killer. But I do want to yes, there are the goofiness in this movie is to be loved and to be treasured. There is a scene involving a young blonde girl in this movie that is one of my all-time favorite scenes because you will not see a scene more ridiculous. I think I videoed the scene from my TV and sent it to you and just was like, this, or I might have just posted it and been like, my God, what an amazing scene. So Horace Pinker has gotten to a point where he can like, his electrified self can like basically take over any body who touches him. He takes over the cop from Jason Lives Friday the 13th Part 6, who plays the character of Pastori in this movie.
Yeah.
And they have this incredibly long, drawn-out chase sequence across a park,
Yeah.
which
He's like
leads
limping.
to this little blonde girl on a scooter being possessed by a serial killer, who then gets to like curse and say all this like nasty dialogue, beat up Peter Berg, steal a tractor, a bulldozer, and just start driving the bulldozer around. And meanwhile, the mom is then chasing after. It has to be seen to be believed. It is so utterly ridiculous.
It's gold.
It
part's pretty
really
amazing.
is. It's like, you brought up David Weiner, and the reason that he's been able to make 9 hours of 15 hours almost of 80s horror documentaries is because the 80s is the quantity over quality genre.
Yes.
There's so many of these movies, but even the crazy, even the bad ones, even the not so great ones, there is stuff to love and appreciate in all of these movies. It's just insane. Like,
yeah. And we had talked a couple of minutes ago about like remaking it or making it better, or it's like too goofy. And it's surprising that he made it so goofy and made it like kind of Freddy-like at one point. One movie I kept thinking of a lot when I saw this for the first time was Fallen with Denzel Washington. How like you have the one, but Elias Koteas is this like prisoner. He's got a vendetta against Denzel Washington. He's able to jump between bodies, right? I felt like that was.
Is that where the Time Is on My Side?
Yes.
Okay.
John Goodman's in it and stuff. Yeah.
Really spooky movie.
Right. I feel like that movie lifts a lot from Shocker. I feel like Shocker is almost like 60% like that movie. Like they're the same story.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I've always seen the box art. I've always seen the box art of Mitch Pileggi just sitting in a chair, just, getting electrocuted. And I know I'm like, oh yeah, this is that over-the-top crazy movie. I got to see this. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad that we're kind of branching out and checking out all these non-Scream, non-Nightmare Craven movies. Next week we were talking about doing
Music of the Heart. Oh, yeah, yes.
Well, it's funny because every fucking movie I go to see, like The Flash and Spider-Verse and Transformers, every fucking movie has the Oppenheimer trailer in front of it and Cillian Murphy, and it looks really good, by the way, too. And I'm like, fuck, we got to cover Red. What the fuck is it called? Red Eye. Thank you. I was gonna say
Red Eye. Red Eye was one of those super surprising little movies where I was like, I remember thinking, oh, there's a new Wes Craven movie out? I didn't hear anything about this. And it's one of those movies that it's the total opposite of Shocker. It gets like you are immediately in this movie and it never lets up.
Yeah.
It is a perfect thriller. And it's one of his most underrated movies. And maybe not even underrated, maybe just underseen movies. And I think it's a good idea to cover that next week. I can't wait for Oppenheimer. I'm not a Christopher Nolan cinema stan. I will actually be seeing Barbie that day, and then Oppenheimer later on. I stan Greta Gerwig, so sorry Oppenheimer, but
it's all good. My wife is a huge Greta Gerwig fan too, and I understand that. Yeah, I mean
her and Noah Baumbach. I'm there for anything they do.
Yep.
But yeah, next Saturday we might have to record a little earlier, but I mean in the week. But yeah, we'll get out Red Eye. I just put out a couple of shorts. Obviously, sadly, Treat Williams died this week in a motorcycle accident. I introduced Charlotte to Deep Rising. She loved it, by the way. And
awesome.
A movie that I remember loving when I saw it in the movie theater. So I put up a review of that. And yeah, you mentioned it. Go watch our People Under the Stairs review. I think we did a good job talking about that. And so speaking of that, I literally last night, I just saw the new horror movie. I'm going to be putting up a short for it by the time the weekend is out. The Blackening. This movie blew me away. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely loved it. And it is, I'm, for my money, this is like the black version of Cabin in the Woods. And one of the first lines in The Blackening is a reference to the people under the stairs. So the
That's fucking
people who wrote this movie and the people that directed this movie, they were very quick to make references to one of the great horror movies about black characters. And it was done by Wes Craven, and we talked about it last week. Yeah. So,
man. You just fucking tied that all into a nice little bow right there. That was good, man.
also, I just want to shout out. I have a good friend, Jared. Him and his buddy started a podcast called Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, where they're covering the entire Charles Band Full Moon universe.
Whoa.
They have only 2 episodes up. They're on Spotify. They covered the original Puppet Master and I believe the original Trancers with Tim Thomerson and Helen Hunt. And I listened to it on my drive home one day. Really good, really fun. And because of them, I'm listening to Charles Band's autobiography on Audible, Confessions of a Puppet Master, which is friggin' amazing so far.
Oh shit, I'll have to check that out. Okay, cool, man. Yeah, well, as you guys can see, Danny absorbs quite a bit of content and he likes to put out reviews. He's putting out shorts like multiple times a week. And then Danny and I always get together once a week to review whatever we're talking about, whatever the theme is. And it could be a streaming show too. Yeah. Right now we're
I just want to the last bit of like possible planning for our channel is I know you're reading a couple Stephen King stories right now.
If it bleeds.
From the book If It Bleeds. Mike Flanagan, at least on IMDb, has plans to adapt The Life of Chuck with Mark Hamill and Tom Hiddleston. I just finished that story. It is weird. It's a lot of different genres in a very strange 3-act kind of play. And there's nobody better to adapt something weird from Stephen King like that than Mike Flanagan, who I was very privileged to meet in person last Sunday night at Tribeca, which, again, tying things in a bow, I was there for Suitable Flesh, the new movie from Joe Lynch, starring Barbara Crampton, Heather Graham, Judah Lewis, and I have a short review of that. That's coming to Shudder soon, and oh boy, if you're an H.P. Lovecraft, Stuart Gordon fan, that movie is for you.
Nice, man. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out when it comes on Shudder. I need to watch some more Shudder content. I haven't covered that in a while. Yeah, good. Okay, well, Danny, you did an awesome job plugging things, tying them all together. We are gonna catch the red eye next week and keep talking about Wes Craven. If you guys haven't subscribed already, please do, and make sure to let us know what you thought of Shocker.